Hey folks, and welcome back to our channel. My name is Nigel and this is Offgrid Van Life, where we look at Offgrid Power, lithium iron phosphate batteries, van conversions and everything in between. Basically, we want to help you to get on the road, find adventure and have an epic van and an electrical system in your van to do so. So in this video we're going to be looking at this battery that we're busy assembling here, which is a custom battery that we are making for a customer. So we had a customer that reached out to us about us providing some consultancy and advice on her van conversion and what she's trying to do, and in the process she then asked us to build out her battery for her. So she had bought these cells herself from AliExpress, but hadn't gotten around to actually assembling and building out the battery. It didn't have a BMS for it, all that sort of stuff, and her needs were fairly specific in that she needed to be able to transport the battery in and out of her van fairly easily into her house, to be able to charge it using mains in her house, because she can't park her van right outside her house and then put an electrical hookup to her van. So we built out the battery, top balanced it, and then we wanted to run some temperature tests and capacity tests to make sure that everything was all right. So here we go.
So we finished the capacity test on this battery. It was a slow burn 40 amps that we drew, and the capacity has come out to 287 amp hours. So I'm quite pleased with that. These aren't our cells in here. We've assembled everything and built it up, but the cells were purchased separately, and these have exceeded the stated capacity by 7 amp hours, so that's pretty good. So now what we're going to do, we've connected up, so it comes out of the battery to this Anderson connector. We've got it coming to a 2 kilowatt Guy&Dell inverter to this fan, and we're going to run this at about 150 amps for an hour just to see how much heat buildup there is. But before we do that, and the reason for it is I want to check every point, so make sure that there are no weak links that are heating up. I'm quite keen to see what these 175 amp hour Andersons are going to cope like, and I want to see how these terminals cope, and then inside also. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this Fleur. So this costs about £200, 220 pounds. So we're going to use this. It's an infrared camera that will tell us where the hotspots are. So the whole battery is a fairly even temperature at the moment. As you can see, there's nothing that stands out. And importantly, when I open it up and actually position the camera to see inside, you can see my hand is the warmest thing. If I bring my hand back so that there's a high spot, you can see there is nothing inside there that is standing out. So let's get this test running. Let's turn the inverter on and turn this fan heater on. I'm just going to check with the BMS. So it is drawing 155 amps at the moment. So that's what we'd expect to see. So we're going to run this for about an hour, this test. It's coming into 5 o'clock, so around about 6 o'clock we will check it again. But in the meantime, if I check back with Fleur, nothing unusual, no. I mean, the whole thing is even temperature at the moment, so nothing's standing out. Slightly warm in there from being charged, but I mean that's just a tiny little bit. So it's saying that it's 22 degrees centigrade inside there. 22, 23 degrees, but fairly even. Nothing is that hot just yet. So let's let this run for about 15 minutes, check it again, and then half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and then 1 hour. That will be the test. So the battery is in this metal case that you can see here. We come out to the negative and positive terminals. We're just running through this inverter at the moment. So this is a 2 kilowatt Guy&Dell inverter going to a standard household fan. And the purpose of this particular test is just to see that there are no weak connections. So this cable here seems to be getting the hottest of all, just by touch, but it's still fine. It's just slightly warmer than everything else. This negative line is fine. The Anderson connector, these are 175 amp Anderson connectors. They seem fine. I can't feel any heat buildup. Of course, we've got the plastic shielding where the contact is actually made, but still, if there was a problem, you'd feel some sort of heat buildup. Running these two thick 35mm cables to the inverter, and no problems. These are warm to the touch, which is completely to be expected. So let me show you inside the battery. So inside we have 4 prismatic cells that we have compressed into an enclosure with some plywood and thread bar. And at this end here we have a 200 amp Dali smart BMS. Smart BMS in the sense that coming out here we've got a hole coming through there with a grommet, and there's the Bluetooth dongle. This little thing here right at the end is the on off switch. Well, it doesn't turn it off, just turns it on, or if it goes to sleep, reactivates it. So the idea is that this battery is meant to be mobile. The customer in question will be using it in a van that can't be charged. Well, the battery can't be charged while it's parked up, so the whole battery needs to come out and go to her home to be charged. So pretty much the 2 hottest points were this terminal and this terminal, but they are still quite fine to the touch. The test has been going for just under half an hour, running at 155 amps, and no problems so far. I've attached this little temperature sensor onto that terminal there. So as you can see, it's showing us that it's 37.4. But what we'll do in a moment is we'll load up the fluor camera and check to see what it's telling us. But if I feel by hand, there's nothing that I am concerned about. The bus bars are fine. They're slightly warm. They're quite thin bus bars, but they can cope with the load. If I feel on the other side, no problems, and no problems on the main negative terminal. The BMS seems to be fine. So nothing. I don't feel any problems just by touch. I don't feel any problems. But let's load up the fluor camera and see. So this is the view of the battery from the outside. So if I take you up and show you the lid itself, you can see very clearly where the cables are. They are warming up. So I've brought my fluor camera around to the other side. You can see where the heater is running, generating quite a bit of heat inside there. And that comes from the inverter, so the whole inverter is quite warm. When I say quite warm, actually it's quite fine to touch, not a problem to touch it at all. We come to the 2 cables feeding the inverter, touch, but not a problem. This one, you can feel it's quite warm, but not an issue. So everything running quite fine there. The most important part of the check with the fluor camera, let's see, the Anderson connector. Some heat build up there, but that's not. It's hardly even warm to the touch. And the cables are warm, as we can see. Not a problem. More importantly, let's look inside. Now, that line on the other side, that is the main positive cable. So if I was to actually reach in and touch it, so do that. It's warm to the touch, but not a problem. It's just slightly warm to the touch, that's all. I've felt by hand there are no issues with the terminals on the other side. If I just reach in and touch the main positive terminal, just not a problem. Where it comes up onto the terminal in the battery case, not a problem. If I have a look here carefully at the bus bars, as you can see, the bus bars are actually not heating up. The cells themselves are heating to be expected. So the cells are warming up just slightly, not much. The cells are warming up, and a little bit of heat build up on this one here. Not much, just a bit of heat build up. but I'm actually quite pleased with that. And for some reason it looks like this balance lead is warm, but it's not really that warm. And I do have a temperature probe on this one. It's telling us it's about 40 degrees. So fluid camera says 30 degrees or so, and the probe says it's hotter, so interesting that. But the BMS, no issues there. This thing here in the middle of the screen is the main negative cable, which is sort of coming up to the mid-high 40s. Not unexpected, and it's getting quite warm, but still not a problem anywhere. So the long and the short of it is, when I have a look inside this battery, just not a problem. Everything is running quite smoothly, and I'm quite pleased with that. There are no issues that I am really worried about. So I've done some checks by touch and with this fluoro camera, and I don't see any problems at all. Right, so this has been running for nearly an hour, just a few minutes to go to 1 hour. And just a reminder, we are running it to check that there are no issues with any of the connectors or cables or terminals or anything like that. So if I look at the BMS, do you want to just bring that there? So the BMS reports that we've used up 51% of the capacity. I'm interested to see what the delta is. So you can see the delta at this stage is 0.0301, so not too bad. I would expect a slightly lower delta. The cells that we use often have a lower delta than that, but that's not too bad, it's fine. Anything below 0.1 is going to be okay. So yeah, so the BMS is fine, and it says it is 30 degrees centigrade on the cells. So if I just go by touch, terminals are warming up, so these cables. Interestingly, the 175 amp Anderson connectors are not even warm to the touch. They're really good. I'm quite impressed with them. Run to two 35mm cables coming to the Gandel inverter, and they're all warm to the touch, but no surprises. So let me come around, and I'm just going to do two things now. So after 1 hour, how hot do they actually feel to the touch? So let's see. Positive terminal, main terminal, quite cool, no problems. And if I feel the terminals, all four terminals, not a problem. If I feel these ones, also quite cool. And this one is slightly warmer here, so we put a probe on, so it's 40 degrees centigrade. That's fine, absolutely fine. After 1 hour, you'd expect it to warm up to that. The bus bars themselves are getting quite warm. This one is warmer than this one, interestingly, but that's fine. Still not any concern. The BMS is quite cool to the touch. These terminals are really, we put very good quality terminals on that can be tightened down to a very high torque. These are probably running at about 15 Newton meters, maybe even more. Warm to the touch, but not hot. The positive, again, warm to the touch, but not hot. But let's get our fluoro camera on. So we'll put that on and get to the app and just wake it up. It takes a good 20 or so seconds to get everything going. It's still switched on. And we should see something any second. There we are. Right, let's turn this. In fact, let's keep it this way. So if we check on the top, not anything to worry about. I'm looking at the Anderson connector. So right in the middle of the screen is where the connectors actually make contact, and I just don't see a problem there. I mean, the cables are warmer than the connector itself, and they're not that warm. So nothing stands out here. It's all quite fine. As we said, we check by touch and it's all okay. So now let's check inside and check on that main terminal, and that's the main positive cable inside going to the terminal. It's obviously quite warm to the touch, but not a problem, not anywhere near something I'd be worried about. In fact, if it wasn't that warm, I'd be worried. So if we look at these terminals over here, we can get quite a good view of them, and the terminals and the bus bars are fairly cool, and the battery itself or the battery cells are warming up. That is to be expected, exactly what I would expect. Look at these ones here, also not a problem. This one, it's now right in the center of the fluor screen. Whoop, tilted the right way. 30 something degrees, let's say it probably goes 35 or so. It's still not a problem, absolutely fine. I'm going to come back and check. I'm checking the negative line coming from the BMS up to the terminal, and I don't see any issues there at all. We fastened it very well, as I said, so that there'd be no issues for this person. The main negative cable is quite warm, and where it crimps on here is probably one of the warmest places in the whole battery, this little spot here, but still not an issue. And the BMS itself, if I look at it around the cables, a bit of warming up to be expected, but nothing out of the ordinary. And if I come back again and look for any things that are outstanding, I can't see any issues with this. So this is what the fluor infrared camera is telling us, and I'm absolutely fine with what I see there. Interesting to see how easy these Andersons are. They're pretty good. Well, the inverter is now shouting at me, but I'm just feeling inside these, and they're not even warm to the touch. The cables are warmer than the connectors themselves. I'm really impressed with these 175 amp Andersons. I mean, they're substantial. We thought they'd be really hard to push in. We use a lot of 50 amp Andersons, and some of the 50 amps are really hard to push in. So we thought maybe these would be, but they, look at that. It's quite easy. I'm actually really pleased with that. So I think she's going to find it easy to disconnect and reconnect this. Right, so we have we've turned the fan off to stop the very high discharge test. The test, as I mentioned before, was not to measure the capacity of the cells. We would use a shunt for that, and I haven't connected the shunts up. We wanted to actually make 100% sure that there are no problems with any of the connectors, because you're coming from, say, on the positive terminal, you're coming from the terminal to the main battery terminal, then to an Anderson connector, or then to the inverter. So there are quite a few points of contact, and we wanted to make sure that there would not be a problem. And in fact, the cables warm up, but all the points of contact, all the connectors are not warming up beyond what we would expect at all. Similar on the negative line, you come from the main negative terminal to the BMS, and then from the BMS to the battery terminal, and then out to the Anderson and to the inverter. So quite a few things along the way. We've checked very carefully that we don't have a problem with heat buildup on any of these. So I'm satisfied that all the terminals are tightened down properly. We went to about 7 Newton meters, just because we asked the lady who we're building this for to find out from the manufacturer exactly what the torque settings are. Weren't able to get them, so we went the safe route of 7 Newton meters. We didn't want to strip things off, so that should be fine. 7 Newton meters. We'd prefer going up to 8 Newton meters, which we actually did on the main terminals. On these ones, we've gone to about, I guess, 20, 30 Newton meters, so that should be fine. So yeah, we're ready to close this up, recharge it, and get it out. So I'm really pleased with this, with how this has turned out. I think this is going to be a great battery.